Dust and HFY. The research vessel Celestial Inquiry drifted silently toward the asteroid belt, its engines barely registering against the vast emptiness of space. On the observation deck, Chief Sinologist Talia Vex pressed her scaled hands against the viewport, 3 pairs of amber eyes blinking in sequence as she studied the approaching field of tumbling rocks. "There it is," she whispered, her voice a soft trill. "Exactly where the coordinates indicated." Captain Nexer moved to stand beside her, his chromatophore skin shifting from professional blue to curious green. "I still don't understand why the Science Directorate would send us all this way to study primitive human technology. Their species is barely spacefaring." "That's precisely why they're interesting," Talia responded, tapping a data tablet. "They've only had faster-than-light travel for 70 years, yet they've survived 3 interstellar conflicts that should have annihilated them. The Directorate wants to know how." Nestled among the tumbling asteroids was their destination, a human military outpost, seemingly abandoned. Its angular, utilitarian design stood in stark contrast to the organic curves of Galactic Union architecture. Scorch marks and impact craters mirrored its surface, telling the story of its last battle. "Preliminary scans complete," announced Science Officer Kellner from his station, his insectoid mandibles clicking with excitement. "No life signs detected. Atmosphere inside is thin but breathable with basic filtration. Power systems appear to be in low-energy standby mode." "Any active defense systems?" Nexer asked. "None that we can detect," Kellner responded. "The facility appears completely dormant." The captain's skin rippled with skepticism. "The humans have a reputation for leaving surprises behind when they abandon outposts. Which is why we're taking every precaution," said Talia. "We'll follow first contact protocols, even though this is an abandoned site." The team prepared for their expedition. Talia Vex, the xenologist specializing in emerging species; Kellner, the science officer whose multifaceted eyes could analyze spectrum ranges beyond most species' perception; Merrick, the engineering specialist, whose 6 limbs made him particularly adept at understanding mechanical systems; and Dorn, the security officer whose heavily plated exoskeleton made him ideal for potentially dangerous missions. Their shuttle docked with the human outpost with a metallic clang that echoed through both vessels. The airlock cycled, equalizing pressure, before opening to reveal a dark corridor lit only by the team's portable lights. "Environmental suits sealed and functioning," Talia confirmed. "Atmosphere is stable, but I'm detecting trace elements of weapons discharge. This place saw combat." They moved cautiously through the corridors, their lights sweeping across the walls. Exposed conduits and pipes ran along the ceiling, a stark contrast to the integrated systems of Union ships. "Remarkable," Merrick muttered, running a scanner along the wall. "Look at these redundant systems. Manual overrides for everything. Physical switches and levers. It's primitive, but what?" Dorn asked, his natural caution evident in his stance. "But incredibly resilient," Merrick finished. "These systems could continue functioning even after catastrophic damage. No central points of failure. They found the command center relatively intact, though emergency shutters had sealed off a section where the hull had been breached. Dormant screens lined the walls, workstations designed for humans to operate manually." "Let's see if we can access their database," Talia suggested. "Kellner, can you interface with their systems?" The science officer approached the main console, connecting the universal adapter. The screens remained dark for several moments before flickering to life, bathing the room in a pale blue glow. "Success," Kellner announced. "Though most systems are locked behind security protocols, I'm accessing only the general information databases." As data began streaming across the screens, Talia moved from station to station, fascination evident in her posture. "Look at these weapon systems, primitive ballistics alongside directed energy. Their FTL drive is inefficient by our standards, but they've hardened it against radiation and electromagnetic interference. Everything is designed to keep functioning under extreme conditions. Captain, Dorn called from a nearby console, his voice tense. I found something in the security logs. The screen before him showed grainy footage from what appeared to be the outpost's final hours. Human personnel ran through corridors as alarms flashed. The audio was fragmented, but the panic was clear. They've breached the outer defenses. Fall back to secondary positions. They're not responding to any communications. The footage abruptly cut to an external view of the outpost. Something was attacking. Dark shapes moving with terrifying speed, their forms difficult to distinguish. What are those? Nexer asked, leaning closer. Unknown, Dorn replied. They don't match any species in our database. The recording ended with a final message from who they presumed was the outpost commander. This is Major Helena Chen of Outpost Bulwark. We are overrun. Initiating Protocol Omega. May Earth remember us. Silence fell over the research team. Talia was the first to speak. Protocol Omega. We need to find out what that is. They continued their exploration, moving deeper into the facility. The living quarters told stories of the humans who had inhabited this place. Personal items abandoned in the evacuation, meals left half-eaten, family photos still displayed beside bunks. It's strange, Merrick observed as they examined what appeared to be an engineering bay. For all their technological limitations, there's an ingenuity to human design that's almost admirable. Don't get sentimental, Dorn cautioned. Remember the Proxima incident. Merrick's appendages fluttered dismissively. That was decades ago, and the humans were provoked. Enough, Talia interrupted. We're here to study, not debate interspecies politics. They discovered the outpost's power core next, a fusion reactor currently in standby mode, but remarkably intact. It's still functional, Merrick said, surprise evident in his voice. After all these years, the radiation shielding is extraordinary for their technological level. As he moved closer to examine the reactor controls, his foot caught on something. A panel in the floor that shifted slightly. Curious, he knelt down to investigate. There's a compartment here, he announced, finding the release mechanism. The panel slid away to reveal a ladder descending into darkness. That's not on any of the schematics we downloaded, Kelnar observed. Talia's eyes narrowed. A secret section. Interesting. Or dangerous, Dorn countered. We should proceed with caution. They descended the ladder one by one, finding themselves in a narrow corridor that led to a heavy blast door. Unlike the other doors in the facility, this one had remained sealed and powered. Whatever's behind here, the humans wanted it protected at all costs, Talia observed. Merrick connected to the door's control panel. I think I can bypass the security. It'll take some time. Their encryption is surprisingly sophisticated. As he worked, the others explored the nearby area, finding what appeared to be a monitoring station. Kelnar managed to activate one of the terminals. Look at this, he called to the others. This outpost wasn't just a military position. It was a research facility. The screen displayed data on weapons testing, but of a kind none of them had seen before. Not conventional weapons, but something else, something that made Kelnar's exoskeleton pale. These are extinction-level weapons, he whispered. Planet killers. Before anyone could respond, the facility's lights suddenly brightened. Dormant systems throughout the outpost began humming to life, startling the research team. What's happening? Nexer demanded. Merrick, did you trigger something? Not me, the engineer insisted, backing away from the door panel. Something else activated the power systems. A mechanical voice spoke from hidden speakers, making them all freeze in place. Motion detected in restricted area. Unknown biological signatures identified. Security protocols activated. Analyzing threat level. Alarms began to sound throughout the facility, emergency lights casting everything in a blood-red glow. We need to get back to the ship, Nexer ordered. Now, as they turned to leave, the blast door that had resisted their efforts began to slide open on its own. Beyond it lay darkness, but something moved within that darkness, something awakening after years of dormancy. And deep within the asteroid, something else stirred, something that had been waiting, watching through the long years, something that recognized the outpost's reactivation as an opportunity it had long anticipated. The hunt would begin again. The awakening. The research team froze as the massive blast door completed its cycle, revealing a chamber bathed in the soft blue glow of stasis fields. At the center stood a single cryopod, its systems humming as they cycled through reactivation sequences. A stasis chamber, Kelnar breathed, multifaceted eyes widening. Someone's alive in there. Before they could retreat, the facility's artificial intelligence spoke again. Life form in critical stasis. Emergency revival protocol initiated. Medical assistance required. Captain Nexer's chromatophores flashed warning patterns. We need to leave. Now. Whatever the humans were keeping here. We can't just leave, Talia interrupted. There's a living being in there. Our ethical protocols are clear. Our primary directive is research, not rescue, Dorn countered, moving protectively in front of the group. The argument became moot as the cryopod's cover slid open with a hiss of escaping gases. Mist swirled around their feet as a figure inside stirred, rising slowly to a sitting position. The human was larger than their research had suggested, with broad shoulders and muscular arms marked with scars and what appeared to be tactical implants. Despite just awakening from stasis, the human's eyes were immediately alert, assessing the situation with unnerving speed. Identify yourselves, the human demanded, voice rough from disuse, but carrying unmistakable authority. Talia stepped forward despite Dorn's protective gesture. I am Chief Sinologist Talia Vex of the Galactic Union research vessel Celestial Inquiry. We are scientists conducting research on human technology. The human's eyes narrowed. Lieutenant Commander James Kovac, Earth Defense Force. How long have I been in stasis? The AI answered. 27 standard years, 4 months, 16 days, Commander Kovac. The human's face revealed nothing, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the pod. Status of outpost bulwark and personnel. All personnel lost in final engagement. You were placed in emergency stasis when critical injuries prevented evacuation. Protocol Omega was initiated by Major Chen before station abandonment. At the mention of Protocol Omega, Kovac's expression hardened. He swung his legs over the side of the pod, revealing that one was partially synthetic, a combat prosthetic far more advanced than the rest of the human technology they'd observed. You shouldn't be here, he said, eyes moving from alien to alien. This facility is restricted EDF property. Nexer stepped forward. This outpost sits in unclaimed space, Commander. We have full authority to conduct research here under Galactic Union protocols. This outpost, Kovac replied evenly, sits exactly where we put it, in the migration path of the Scourge. The word hung in the air, unrecognized, but carrying unmistakable menace. The Scourge? Talia asked. Kovac moved to a nearby locker, retrieving what they recognized as a weapon and utility harness. His movements were fluid, showing no signs of prolonged stasis. The reason this outpost exists, the reason I'm here. He checked the weapon with practiced efficiency. And if Protocol Omega was initiated, the reason none of us should be here now. Before anyone could question him further, the facility shuddered. A deep, reverberating sound echoed through the structure, like something massive had impacted the outer hull. The AI spoke with new urgency. Perimeter breach detected. Unknown entities have entered the facility. Biosignatures match historical records. Scourge presence confirmed. Kovac's reaction was immediate. He moved to a wall panel, revealing the hidden weapons cache. How many in your research team? Just us 4 and our captain, Talia replied, anxiety rippling through her scales. Your ship, is it still docked? Yes, Nexer confirmed. But what are these, Scourge? Another impact shook the facility. Closer this time. No time, Kovac said, tossing Dorn what appeared to be a compact weapon. Can you shoot? The security officer examined the unfamiliar device. I am trained in defensive protocols, but point and pull the trigger. Aim for central mass. Kovac distributed more weapons, then sealed the blast door they'd entered through. This facility was a trap, designed to draw them in and eliminate as many as possible before they reached human space. You used yourselves as bait, Kelnar asked, mandibles clicking in agitation. We volunteered, Kovac corrected, checking a monitor that showed various sections of the outpost. The Scourge destroyed 3 colony worlds before we understood what we were dealing with. They're not interested in resources or territory. They hunt. Intelligent species are their preferred prey. On the monitor, they caught glimpses of movement, dark, angular forms moving with disturbing speed through the corridors, methodically checking each room. They hunt in packs, Kovac continued, voice dropping to a near whisper. They learn, adapt, and they never stop once they found prey. Why didn't the Galactic Union know about this threat? Nexer demanded. Because we stopped them here, Kovac replied grimly. This outpost and 5 others like it. We held the line while Earth evacuated the frontier colonies. Protocol Omega was our last resort, converting the asteroid's core into a miniature nova, taking the Scourge fleet with it. But it didn't detonate, Merrick observed. Obviously, Kovac agreed. Something went wrong. Maybe Major Chen didn't get the chance to complete the sequence. His eyes hardened. And now they're back. Another impact, closer still. Metal groaned under stress. We need to reach your ship, Kovac decided. If we can get off this rock, we might have a chance. Our vessel is research class, Nexer objected. Minimal defenses, no significant weapons. Better than staying here to die, Kovac replied, approaching a schematic of the facility displayed on a nearby screen. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs parallel to the main corridors. It should get us close to your docking point without exposing us too much. Talia moved closer to the human, studying him with scientific curiosity despite the danger. You're surprisingly functional for someone who just spent nearly 3 decades in stasis. Kovac didn't look up from the schematic. Military-grade stasis, designed for long-term deployment. And I've had worse wake-up calls. A screech echoed through the ventilation system, a sound that raised primal fear responses in each of them, regardless of species. High-pitched, yet somehow deeply resonant, it spoke of hunger and anticipation. They've picked up our scent, Kovac said, moving toward an access panel in the floor. Once we're in the tunnels, absolute silence. They hunt primarily by sound and motion. Their visual acuity isn't great, but their hearing is exceptional. As he pulled the panel open, revealing a narrow passage below, Dorn positioned himself between the human and the others. How do we know we can trust you? The security officer demanded. For all we know, you could be leading us into an ambush. Kovac looked up at the heavily armored alien, and for the first time, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. If I wanted you dead, I'd have let you walk out that door. He nodded toward the sealed blast door. Right now, I need you alive. Your ship is my ticket out of here, and you need my help to reach it. That's all the trust either of us needs. Another impact shook the facility, and the lights flickered momentarily. They're testing the structure, Kovac explained, looking for weaknesses. We don't have much time. One by one, they descended into the maintenance tunnel, a cramped passage filled with conduits and support beams. Kovac took the lead, moving with surprising stealth for his size. Talia followed, then Merrick, Kelnar, with Dorn and Nexer bringing up the rear. They had crawled perhaps 50 meters when the human suddenly froze, raising a fist in what they recognized as a universal halt signal. Above them, something moved across the grating, a rhythmic clicking punctuated by what sounded like sniffing. In the dim emergency lighting, Talia could see Kovac slowly reach for his sidearm. The clicking stopped directly above them. A viscous fluid began to drip through the grate, some kind of secretion that sizzled faintly when it hit the tunnel floor. For nearly a minute, none of them moved. Talia's heart hammered in her chest, certain the sound would give them away. Finally, the creature moved on, its steps fading into the distance. Kovac resumed their advance, but the pace was agonizingly slow. Twice more they froze as Scourge passed overhead, and once they had to backtrack when they found a section of tunnel collapsed. They were perhaps halfway to the docking port when a cacophony of screeches erupted somewhere behind them. They found the stasis chamber, Kovac whispered. They know someone was there recently. Move faster. They abandoned stealth for speed, crawling as quickly as the confined space allowed. They reached an intersection where the tunnel opened into a small maintenance hub. Kovac consulted a schematic on his wrist device. We're close to the docking area, but we'll have to leave the tunnels. The next section collapsed years ago. Is there another route? Nexer asked. Yes, but it adds time we don't have. Kovac checked his weapon. We go up here, move through the mess hall, then down to the docking level. They emerged from the tunnel into what had once been a storage area. Time and the battle damage had left it in disarray, with containers toppled and contents long since decayed. Stay close, move fast, and if I say drop, you hit the deck immediately, Kovac instructed. Questions? Just one, Talia said. If Protocol Omega was a station-destroying last resort, why are you so determined to escape? Shouldn't you be trying to complete it? Kovac's expression darkened. Because the Scourge we're facing now are just scouts. If they report back to their main hive about finding this place active again, and with new prey species, the swarm that follows will make what happened to our colonies look like a minor skirmish. He moved to the door, listened intently, then slowly opened it to peer down the corridor. Satisfied it was clear, he motioned them forward. They moved as a tight group through dimly lit corridors, passing signs of both the original battle and the recent intrusion of the Scourge. Claw marks scored metal walls. Doors had been forcibly pried open, and occasionally they found dark stains on the floor that Kovac pointedly avoided looking at. They were crossing the mess hall when they heard it, a low, rhythmic clicking coming from multiple directions. Kovac immediately signaled them toward a serving counter, all 6 aliens crouching behind it just as the first of the Scourge entered. Through a gap in the counter, Talia got her first clear view of their hunters. The creatures stood nearly 2 meters tall, with exoskeletons that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their limbs were jointed in unsettling ways, allowing movements that seemed to defy conventional biomechanics. But it was their heads that inspired true horror, elongated and eyeless, dominated by auditory organs and what appeared to be scent receptors. 3 of the creatures entered the mess hall, moving in different directions, systematically investigating the space. One passed so close to their hiding place that Talia could smell it, an acrid, chemical odor unlike any biological entity she'd ever encountered. Kovac remained perfectly still, weapon ready, eyes never leaving the nearest creature. When it finally moved away to investigate another section, he leaned close to whisper to the group. When I move, follow exactly in my footsteps. The docking level access is 30 meters beyond that door. He waited until all 3 creatures had their backs turned, then rose silently and began a careful path between tables. The aliens followed, matching his steps precisely. They had nearly reached the far door when Merrick's foot caught a discarded tray, sending it clattering across the floor. The response was instantaneous. All 3 Scourge whirled, emitting high-pitched screeches that summoned more of their kind from nearby corridors. Run, Kovac shouted, abandoning stealth. He fired several rounds at the nearest creature, the impacts causing it to stagger back, but not fall. They sprinted for the door, the sounds of pursuit close behind. As they raced down the corridor toward the docking level, more Scourge appeared ahead, cutting off their route. This way. Kovac veered suddenly into a side passage, secondary route to the docking bay. Longer but His words cut off as something struck him from behind. A projectile of some sort that embedded in his shoulder. He stumbled but kept moving, tearing the object free and discarding it. They rounded a corner and found themselves facing a dead end. A collapsed section of corridor blocked their path. "Back! We have to go back," Nexer shouted. "No time," Kovac grunted, the wound on his shoulder smoking slightly. He moved to a nearby wall panel, tearing it open to reveal manual controls. Maintenance shaft, straight down to the docking level. The panel slid aside, revealing a vertical shaft with ladder rungs embedded in the wall. Without hesitation, Kovac began descending, motioning for the others to follow. The sounds of pursuit grew louder. Dorn took up position at the shaft entrance, firing the human weapon at the approaching scourge to buy time. One by one, the aliens entered the shaft, with Dorn last to follow. They descended rapidly, the metal rungs cold beneath their hands. Above them, screeching and clawing sounds echoed as the scourge discovered their escape route. "They're following," Kelnar called, looking up to see dark shapes entering the shaft. "Almost there," Kovac called back. He reached a closed hatch and worked the manual release, swinging it open to reveal the docking level corridor. "Go." They emerged into a wider passage, the familiar sight of their docking port visible at the far end. But between them and safety stood a lone scourge, larger than the others, its exoskeleton marked with patterns that suggested experience and rank. It turned toward them, emitting a different sound, not a hunting screech, but something that sounded almost like communication, and then it charged. The Riti Keoning. Kovac didn't hesitate. He hurled himself directly at the charging scourge, meeting it halfway down the corridor in a collision of human and alien bodies. The impact drove both of them into the wall, denting the metal plating. "Get to your ship," he shouted as he grappled with the creature. "Start your engines." The research team sprinted toward their docking port, Dorn pausing only long enough to fire several rounds at the scourge pursuing them down the maintenance shaft. The shots bought them precious seconds. Behind them, Kovac fought with desperate intensity. The scourge commander was stronger, faster, but the human fought with a savagery that seemed to surprise even the predatory alien. When the creature's claws raked across his chest, drawing blood, Kovac responded by jamming his combat knife into a joint in its exoskeleton. The aliens reached their airlock, Nexer frantically entering the access codes while the others provided covering fire. The door cycled open agonizingly slowly. "Kovac," Talia called, seeing the humans still locked in combat with the scourge commander. Two more of the aliens had now joined the fight, circling the pair. The human managed to break free for just a moment. "Go, get the ship ready. I'll be right behind you." The research team retreated through the airlock, all except Talia. The xenologist hesitated, watching as Kovac drew a second weapon from his boot, some kind of compact explosive device. He slammed it against the scourge commander's torso, then dove away just as it detonated. The explosion sent fragments of exoskeleton flying in all directions. Using the momentary confusion, Kovac sprinted toward the airlock, blood streaming from multiple wounds. Talia helped pull him through just as the remaining scourge recovered in charge. The airlock slammed shut, cycling to seal them safely inside the Celestial Inquiry's docking tube. "We need to detach immediately," Kovac gasped, leaning heavily against the wall. "They'll breach that door within minutes." Nexer didn't waste time arguing. "Kelnar, get to the bridge. Initiate departure sequence. Merrick, ensure all systems are ready for emergency acceleration." Kovac limped alongside them as they made their way to the bridge. The wound on his shoulder had left a trail of blood, and fresh cuts across his chest and face spoke of the ferocity of his recent fight. "You're injured," Talia observed. "I've had worse," he replied, though his pallor suggested otherwise. On the bridge, Kelnar had already begun the detachment sequence. Through the viewports, they could see Scourge gathering around their docking port, attempting to breach the sealed airlock. "Ready for detachment," Kelnar reported. But our standard procedure requires a 10-minute. Override it, Nexer ordered. Emergency protocols. The ship shuddered as the docking clamps released. Slowly, the celestial inquiry began to pull away from the outpost. There through the airlock. Merrick shouted, watching the external cameras. Several Scourge had breached the docking tube and were now clinging to the ship's hull, trying to find a way inside. Increase thrust, Nexer ordered. Shake them off. The engines roared to life, pushing them away from the outpost with increasing speed. One by one, the Scourge lost their grip and tumbled away into space. Just as relief began to spread through the bridge, proximity alarms blared. Multiple contacts emerging from the asteroid field. Kelnar reported, voice tight with fear. Configuration matches Scourge vessels. 7. No, 9 ships. They're moving to intercept. Kovac moved to the sensor display, studying it intently despite his injuries. They were waiting, watching the outpost all this time. His face hardened. And now they've seen your ship. A new species they haven't encountered before. New prey. What do we do? Nexer demanded. Our vessel isn't built for combat. How fast can you reach FTL? Kovac asked. Standard pre-jump sequence takes 20 minutes, Merrick replied. We don't have 20 minutes, Kovac said, pointing to the approaching Scourge vessels. They'll intercept us in less than 5. Talia stepped forward. Can we outrun them on sublight engines? Kovac shook his head. Not a chance. Their pursuit craft are built for speed. He studied the asteroid field surrounding them, then pointed to a particularly dense cluster. There, head into the densest part of the field. The asteroids will provide some cover while you prepare for jump. That's incredibly dangerous, Nexer objected. We could be struck by. Less dangerous than what happens if they catch us, Kovac interrupted. He pulled up the outpost schematics on a nearby console. And while you're doing that, I need access to your communications array. Why? Dorn asked suspiciously. Because I'm going to finish what Major Chen started. Kovac's expression was grim but determined. Protocol Omega. Understanding dawned on Talia's face. You're going to detonate the outpost. If I can reinitiate the sequence remotely, yes. Kovac didn't look up from the console. The blast should take out most of their fleet. Nexer ordered the course change, and the celestial inquiry plunged into the asteroid field. Their pilot, trained for research missions rather than evasive maneuvers, struggled to navigate the treacherous environment. Meanwhile, Kovac worked feverishly at the communications console, attempting to establish a secure link with the outpost's systems. His face showed growing frustration. They've damaged the receiver array, he announced. I can't establish a clean connection. What does that mean? Talia asked. It means someone has to go back, Kovac said quietly. The detonation sequence can only be initiated from the command center, manually. Silence fell over the bridge as the implications became clear. No, Talia said firmly. There must be another way. There isn't, Kovac replied. And we're out of time. He straightened, wincing at his injuries. I need a shuttle. That's suicide, Nexer objected. That's the job, Kovac corrected him. It's what we signed up for. What Major Chen and the others died for. His eyes hardened. If those Scourge ships survive to report back about your species, they'll come for your worlds next. Billions will die. A nearby console beeped urgently. They're gaining on us, Kelnar reported. 4 minutes to intercept. You'll never make it back to the outpost in time, Merrick said. I'm not trying to make it back, Kovac replied. I'm trying to draw them away from you. If I can get enough of them to follow me, you might have a chance to complete your jump preparations. He turned to Nexer. Get me to a shuttle. When I launch, take your ship to the far side of the largest asteroid in the field. The mass should provide some shielding when the outpost goes. Nexer's chromatophores cycled through colors of indecision before settling on a resigned blue-green. Very well. As they made their way to the shuttle bay, Talia walked alongside Kovac. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You don't know us. We're not even the same species." Kovac glanced at her. "Does that matter?" "Most species prioritize their own kind," she replied. "Maybe that's the difference you've been researching," he said. "Humans learned the hard way that survival isn't just about being the strongest or having the best technology. Sometimes it's about what you're willing to sacrifice." In the shuttle bay, Kovac quickly familiarized himself with the alien craft's controls. The design was different, but the principles were universal enough for him to manage. As he prepared for launch, Nexer approached him. "The galaxy should know what happened here, what you did." Kovac shook his head. "If I succeed, what I need you to do is warn your union. The Scourge aren't extinct. This is just one hunting pack. There will be others." The shuttle systems came online, engine signature deliberately strong, designed to attract attention. "One more thing," Kovac said as the outer doors began to open. "Tell your leaders that Earth is ready to discuss mutual defense agreements. We've been fighting these things alone for too long." The shuttle launched, immediately broadcasting on all frequencies, a deliberate beacon to draw the Scourge away from the research vessel. As predicted, several of the alien ships broke off their pursuit of the celestial inquiry to chase this new provocative target. From the bridge, the research team watched as Kovac's shuttle weaved through the asteroid field, drawing half the Scourge fleet with him in a deadly game of pursuit. The human's piloting skills were remarkable, using the terrain and debris to maximum advantage, despite his unfamiliarity with the craft. "He's heading back to the outpost," Talia observed. "But there's no way he'll reach it before they catch him." "Jump preparations at 70%, Kelnar reported. 10 more minutes." On their screens, they watched as Kovac's shuttle suddenly accelerated, pushing the alien craft beyond its design specifications. The engines glowed dangerously hot as he pushed them to their limits. "What is he doing?" Merrick asked. "Those engines aren't designed for that kind of output." "Creating a diversion," Dorn replied, a new respect in his voice. Kovac's shuttle abruptly changed course, diving toward a cluster of smaller asteroids. 3 Scourge vessels followed, closing the distance rapidly. Just as they were about to overtake him, Kovac executed a maneuver that seemed impossible, cutting power completely, allowing momentum to carry the shuttle between 2 converging asteroids, then reactivating engines at precisely the right moment to change vector. 2 of the pursuing vessels couldn't adjust in time. They collided with the asteroids in twin explosions that sent debris cascading through the field. The third narrowly avoided the same fate, but lost ground in the pursuit. "Remarkable," Talia whispered. "No Union pilot would have attempted that." "Jump preparations at 85%, Kelnar reported. 7 minutes remaining." On the screen, they watched as Kovac continued his desperate flight toward the outpost, the remaining Scourge ships in close pursuit. He was taking increasingly dangerous risks, skimming so close to asteroids that collisions seemed inevitable, only to veer away at the last possible moment. "He won't make it," Nexer said quietly. "There are too many of them." As if in answer to the captain's assessment, one of the Scourge vessels managed to score a hit on the shuttle's engine housing. The craft lurched, trailing debris and venting atmosphere. "He's been hit," Merrick reported unnecessarily. Despite the damage, Kovac maintained his course. The outpost was growing larger on their screens now, its battle-scarred exterior gleaming dully in the light of a distant sun. "Jump preparations at 92%, Kelnar announced. 4 minutes. The damaged shuttle limped toward the outpost's main docking bay, the pursuing Scourge vessels closing in for the kill. At the last moment, Kovac executed another unexpected maneuver. Rather than attempting to dock, he deliberately crashed the shuttle through the bay doors, forcing an entry. "Shuttle has breached the outpost perimeter," Dorn reported. "Multiple Scourge vessels are docking or forcing entry as well." "They're going after him," Talia realized. "They want the hunt." "Jump preparations at 97%, Kelnar said. 2 minutes remaining." Those 2 minutes stretched into an eternity as they watched the external cameras, waiting for any sign of what was happening inside the outpost. The remaining Scourge vessels had positioned themselves around the facility, seemingly confident their prey was cornered. 1 minute to jump capability, Kelmar announced. At that moment, a new transmission cut through their communication system. Kovac's voice, breathless and strained. Celestial inquiry, if you can hear me. Protocol Omega initiated. 30 seconds to detonation. Get clear. There was a pause, the sound of gunfire in the background. Tell Earth, tell them we held the line. The transmission cut off abruptly. Jump capability achieved, Kelnar reported. Get us out of here, Nexer ordered. Maximum safe distance. Now. The celestial inquiry surged forward, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the outpost before initiating their jump sequence. Just as the familiar distortion of FTL began to envelop their ship, they saw it, a blinding flash, as the outpost's core detonated, the explosion consuming the structure and every Scourge vessel in the vicinity. The shockwave expanded outward, catching the outer edge of their shield bubble, just as they transitioned to FTL. They emerged from jump 2 light-years away, the ship's systems registering minor damage from the shockwave, but nothing critical. For several moments, no one spoke, each processing what they had witnessed. Did we record all of that? Talia finally asked, her voice subdued. Every moment, Kelnar confirmed. Nexer moved to the center of the bridge, his chromatophores shifting through a complex pattern of emotions before settling on a deep, respectful blue. Set course for Union headquarters, he ordered. Priority clearance. We have a report to make, and a warning to deliver. As the celestial inquiry began its journey home, Talia stood at the viewport, looking back toward the distant point of light that marked the asteroid field, now forever altered by what had transpired there. He could have escaped with us, she said softly. We had room on the ship. No, Dorn replied, standing beside her. He couldn't have. Why not? Because that wasn't what he was trained for. The security officer's expression held new understanding. His mission was to ensure the Scourge never threatened anyone again, even at the cost of his own life. He wasn't just fighting for his species. He was fighting for all potential victims. Talia nodded slowly. We came to study human technology and discovered something far more valuable. What's that? Merrick asked, joining them. Why they've survived when they should have perished, she answered. It wasn't their weapons or ships or redundant systems, though those helped. It was their willingness to sacrifice everything, not just for their own kind, but for others, even those they've never met. In the days that followed, as they prepared their report for Union leadership, the research team compiled everything they had learned about humans, their technology, their tactics, their psychology. But central to their findings was Lieutenant Commander James Kovac and the choice he had made. 6 months later, when the first official diplomatic delegation from Earth arrived at Union headquarters, they were greeted not with the suspicion usually reserved for emerging species, but with respect. The humans were surprised to find that their reputation had preceded them. Stories of a lone human soldier who had sacrificed himself to save an alien research team, and in doing so, prevented a catastrophic invasion. When the human ambassador expressed confusion over how this story had spread when no official contact had yet been established, Talia Vex, now serving as special advisor to the Union Security Council, simply smiled. You should know, Ambassador, that we came to study human technology, believing it primitive yet somehow effective. What we learned instead was that humanity's greatest strength isn't technological at all. She gestured toward the stars visible through the chamber's great window. Out there, facing the darkness between worlds, what matters most isn't the sophistication of your ships or the power of your weapons. It's the courage to stand against impossible odds, not just for your own kind, but for all life. The ambassador nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. We've had to learn that lesson the hard way. As have we all, Talia replied. But perhaps now we can learn the next lessons together. As the formal introductions began, Talia couldn't help but think of Kovac and his final words. Tell them we held the line. In the end, he had done far more than that. He had built a bridge between species that would endure long after the technology they had come to study had become obsolete. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the remaining scourge hives received the final transmissions from their hunting pack. Not messages of new prey and its successful hunts, but warnings of a species that would sacrifice everything to protect not just themselves, but others. A species to be avoided at all costs. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through technological superiority, but through something far more rare and valuable, the willingness to stand as a shield for all sentient life, known and unknown. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was safer for it.